Welcome back to Beyond the Spectrum. This is Dream, sharing our family's journey with autism with you. And this is episode 25. So we are going to pick up where we left off yesterday, going through that stage of high school and teenage years with Micah. And we had left off talking about his delays a little bit and what a blessing in disguise that was. When you think about it, think about this for a second. When your child is 13 and they're dealing with all the typical things that other typical 13-year-olds are going through, you not only are dealing with that child, but you are dealing with the entire community of children that are around them and all of that influence and everything that is kind of spiking that behavior. It becomes exponentially harder because you're actually not just dealing with your child. You're dealing with all of the children that influence your child too. And it's very hard to limit that because you don't want to limit their friendships and you don't want to limit that social interaction, but you want to limit the negative influence and the pressure. And it's really tricky. We had an amazing situation. We lived in a very isolated place. We lived and worked at a Christian camp. And so our kids got the benefit of going to summer camp all summer long for free. And so they got all of this, great interaction, so much fun. It does everything that you could possibly think of summer camp all summer long. Then they got these spurts of it during, the weekends when kids groups would come up and they would get to interact, but it wasn't the kind of interaction where it was that kind of influence that was their friends. It was being able to interact with kids and have fun, but then pulling back into this, once again, isolated kind of environment where we had a lot of control. So you would think, oh, so your kids were super sheltered, right? So those are those kids. In some ways, yes, and that was a benefit, but it didn't have any of the negatives that come along with it because we made sure that we chose where we wanted them to interact in safe places where other, parents were involved, where we were there. And so I feel like we gave them the best social interaction that we could in a way that was still very protected, that didn't feel overprotective to them. And I can say that because if you ask them, they will tell you that. They know the traditional mindset of, oh, you were homeschooled. And they said that they never had that feeling. And actually other people have told them that they would say, oh, well, we know homeschool people and we know homeschool people. And you're one of those homeschool people that it works with. And you're very you're capable. You can speak to adults. You can speak to kids. You're very confident. You're very secure. And that was our experience as well. That was our observation of our children. So to have Micah as an autistic child dealing with all these other things, but also being slightly delayed in his maturity and being isolated, being protected, it was just this amazing bubble that he had that was such a gift from God, and that we were able to kind of go, this is the best of all worlds right here, because he was 13, but maybe in an 11-year-old's mindset. And then he was 14 and maybe in a 12-year-old's mindset. So even if he was around other 14-year-old boys who were maybe dealing with 14-year-old boy behavior and issues, he didn't get that yet. He wasn't there. And so he just thought it was funny, or he kind of could, be in his own world and just be like, I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm good. And it was great because he got all the benefits of the friendship. But by the time that he was then in that mindset, they had already gone past it. They weren't struggling there anymore. So now he had this amazing kind of support system that was beyond that and able to help him through that. And maybe this is kind of getting into parenting, not really dealing exclusively with autism, but I'll just share it with you because maybe it helps. We were always involved in our kids' lives. And I have noticed, I have another friend, Greg, we have shared this same kind of affection for this era in our lives where our homes were the place where our kids' friends came. And that tells you something about how much your children trust you and love you and appreciate you and respect you when your home is the home that not only they choose to have their friends come, but their friends choose to be at. You want to provide that so that you can be involved in your children's life and you can get to know the friends and you can have open discussions and you're hearing about what the topics are about. And afterwards you talk to your children and say, hey, so what's that all about? How do you feel about that? What do you think? And we've always maintained that with Micah, especially, and Sydney also as well. But being able to see them in that environment, being able to see their friends, that group that they're with, and being able to have that space, and now extending that into their interests in the opposite sex, right? And what that looks like, and still being there, still watching, still making it it's not a taboo topic. It's not something that we take lightly. It's not something that we tease them about. We have not taken that route of teasing our children about flirting or interests or any of that. We always have a very healthy view of that, which is tell me what you like about them. Tell me what interests you. I also agree. I think this is a great quality. I think this is a very bad quality about this person. I think you need to steer clear of that. I think I see a pattern happening here that we need to talk about. I really appreciate and admire the way that you do this. And so with Micah, when we would watch him with, one girl in particular when he was younger that he really had an affection for, we just would stand at a distance, and kind of watch and then ask him, oh, well, what did she say today? And everybody came up to us and said, he is such a gentleman. I mean, he sits next to her and he asks about her day and what happened in her week. And he just, if she has things that are concerning, he says, hey, I'm going to pray about that for you. And, it was just incredible to be able to foster that and to be able to embrace and support that and not run away from that and not scream, oh my goodness, he's into a girl and I don't know what to do. But to be able to walk through that with him, I think it was just as much of a training ground for us as it was as parents, as it was for him to see what that's like. And I will say that relationship and that trust that he has for us and we have for him has continued to the point where girls that he's interested in now, still, he very much wants to know our opinions. He very much wants to have that, what do you think about them? Let's have the discussion. Let's talk about it. What do you see that I bring? What do you see that she brings? Do you think that we make a good match? Do you think, and I love that. And I think that is so important in your neurodivergent child's life, that they know that they can continue to communicate openly about these things, that there's nothing that scares you about the conversation, that you're not going to shy away because they already struggle with those emotions and communication and expressing that. And if you now do that same thing, then it becomes awkward. Micah and Joe and myself have talked about some things that are really personal and really difficult to talk about, and yet he's come to the table ready to have that discussion, and he's been open and he's been hungry for that interaction, and it's really been so special. So that whole experience, I think, would be categorized by open communication, a lot of support, recognizing where you've gone wrong, admitting that openly, showing them, your kids, especially your neurodivergent child, that this is what it looks like when you go wrong, and this is how we, take the steps to correct it and we rectify the situation. And then I'll kind of finish this whole section up with where I messed up in high school, and realizing that, that was a really tough patch. But we didn't give up on each other. It wasn't a problem with, the schooling that we had chosen and the curriculum that we had. It was a problem with how we were working through that. And there were a lot of tears and there was a lot of frustration. And there were some things that I had to let him get through because he got himself into that. Even after I had kind of corrected the situation, okay, we got to fix this, and then he had to fix it on his own. I couldn't fix it for him. And that was important, that he had, that he could do that. that he would struggle through and that he would fail and that we wouldn't give up on him, that we would argue and that we would reprimand and that we would even have to take things away and punish and all that stuff, but that we were not giving up on him. And that meant the world to him. And that made our relationship even stronger. And to this day, we still have that kind of connection with one another, that we just didn't give up on each other. And not just us with him, but him with us, because we were making mistakes too. And it was a really, really amazing time. And I'll just say one last thing. This was just, I'll end on a kind of sad note. They graduated in 2020. And I tell you, that was the hardest thing. I mean, we had worked so hard to get to that graduation, and I could not wait to see both of them walk across that stage, because we had done it together. And that was going to be a celebration. And seeing how COVID robbed us of that was terrible. It was so terrible. But hey, you know what? It's not the end of the world. And the journey was so much more important than that milestone being celebrated in a public way. We still celebrated it in other ways. And I just want to encourage you that you're going to come across those times. It's not just COVID, right? We're going to come across those times where we're robbed of those things, but take them back for you in other ways. Celebrate those moments. Never stop celebrating those moments, because you have done this as a team and you did it together, and you need to appreciate each other and love each other. So make sure you do that. Set aside those special times where you get to party and love and celebrate and look at each other and say, I'm so proud of what we've accomplished together, and I can't wait to see what comes next, because I love doing life with you. See you tomorrow.